We're good? Good evening. Welcome to our, got a couple of special meetings to start with tonight. We're going to start with our Herriman City Fire Service Area Agenda, or area meeting, sorry. Not the agenda, the meeting. We're going to start with 2.1, motion, approval of minutes. Look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
You got to read that.
Oh.
2.1. It's a long one.
I know. Motion to have the minutes of June 11th, 2025 be prepared and distributed to each member of the HCFSA board. The board will have 10 days to review the minutes and submit any changes to the secretary. If after 10 days there are no changes, the minutes will stand approved. If there are changes, the process will be followed until the changes are made and the board is in agreement.
Okay, motion by Teddy.
Second.
Second by Sherry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, 3.1, discussion and consideration of a resolution adopting a proposed rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City Fire Service area. Kyle.
Thank you, Board. It's that time of year again to discuss tax rates and property taxes, probably one of your favorite topics. So this is for the fire service area. What I would like to cover tonight is just review the basics of property tax, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard or know, but we might have people online that have not heard this. Review the certified tax rate information for tax year 2025. And just as a notice to the board, the tax rates changed a minor amount, so the amounts on the slide might not match what I sent you yesterday, but it is a minor difference. Discuss staff's recommendation on the property tax levy, and then an action item for the board is to either adopt the CTR, which stands for certified tax rate, or propose a tax rate, a different tax rate for 2025. And just as a reminder, especially for the public, this is not adopting the tax rate and assessing the levy. This is stating an intent that we're not going to accept the certified tax rate. And the amount that's adopted or proposed tonight, if you do go that route, is just the maximum amount we could levy when we have the additional public hearing in August. And you can see on the slide, the meeting is actually already scheduled for August 13th, 2025 at 6:30 if it is needed. So just some basics on property tax. One is that the county audit assessor calculates what's called a certified tax rate, and that's the rate that generates the same amount of revenue as the previous year plus any new growth. So what that means is no additional revenue is received if a valuation increases. So if a home, as we'll see, our home values in Herriman have gone up, because a home goes up from $620,000 to $650,000, that doesn't necessarily mean the homeowner is going to pay an additional tax the way that the tax rate is structured in Utah. One thing of note for the fire service area is the rates have been affected by participation in the redevelopment project areas. As you probably remembered, as a board, you did adopt a resolution that you would participate in certain project areas. That doesn't affect the amount that the service area receives, other than there is a reduction for the amount that went to these redevelopment project areas. And then just for the public, an adoption of a tax rate higher than the certified tax rate triggers what's called truth in taxation. Truth in taxation involves a number of hearings notifying the state and county of the intent to levy a tax rate that's higher than what has been calculated by the county. And there are specific advertising requirements, and there is a public hearing before the board can vote on that levy. So getting to the nuts and bolts, so the certified tax rate for this upcoming year is 0.001329, which, as you can notice, is actually higher than last year due to that redevelopment area adjustments that were made. The amount generated, however, is about $382,000 more, and that is due to new growth that has happened in the service area, and you'll see this as we progress with the other districts and the city itself. And then, as I had mentioned previously, the average home value in Herriman is now $640,000. It was $613,600 last year, which is a 4.3% difference. And then, just of note, with the certified tax rate, the average $640,000 home will pay $468 to the tax district, the fire service district, if the certified tax rate's approved by the board. Moving on to staff recommendations, staff would recommend making small increases to the rate each year to keep the purchasing power of the revenue that the district's receiving. This is because there's no built-in inflationary adjustments that are made in that tax rate that the county calculates for us. We basically get the same amount last year plus any new growth that happens. And then, just as a reminder, especially for the public, that new growth money is needed to service the new residents that move into the district or the city. So it isn't like the district is getting a windfall from that, because we do have new residents to serve. When staff was looking at what increase to propose, because the largest expense in the district is our assessment to Unified Fire, that would be what we would base our recommendation off of. So our assessment did go up $147,766, which is lower than it has been in the past. So table below shows if we were to raise our revenue by $147,766, what that would do to the tax rate. So it would increase the tax rate 1.7%. And then once again, for that average home, it would be an $8 per year increase. In the middle does show the additional revenues the city would receive from the new growth, so that's for the new businesses and residences, and then the proposed tax increase to keep up with inflation. So with that, that is my prepared presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions or any discussion that might occur.
Jared?
We'll always look down for everybody else first. Everyone here knows, at least my involvement and work with Unified Fire and getting us out of the taxing district and even getting this increase more in line with inflation. We've been about double this increase for many years, a few years, much more than double. So we've made a lot of adjustments at UFA, right, which is just the service provider that we're using. So we're just, for lack of a better description, the attorney's not here tonight to correct me. It's not a contract, but we're paying them to provide the service. We own the building, right, and the land, and then we pay them to bring the trucks and the people, et cetera, to do the service. We've gotten it down, basically that budget down to really more of a regular inflationary number. At this point, I'll spare you all the details. Anyone that's listening, anybody that wants to ask me those questions, I'd be happy to tell you ad nauseum all the work that I've done the last several years. But this is much more in line. Having said that, it's a lot different than the next one we're going to talk about with law enforcement, right? With this one, this increase is fine and it's minimal, and I'll spend a lot more time talking about inflation and things the next meeting, I think, when more people are paying attention. This is more what I'd like to know between now and then, or maybe be prepared with, is give me an outline, a plan of maybe where we were a couple of years ago, where the fund balance is now, right? So, sorry, I'm trying to think of ways to reduce the amount of information. But for the service district, we collect all the money. We have to pay directly the cost of the building and the land, right? So we've already acquired the land, and I believe paid for it for where we're relocating the existing 103. And and we're paying cash out of the savings that we've gotten from leaving the UFSA service district. So we're not bonding for that or paying interest. We're getting that done. We still have to pay the staffing costs, which is close to $3 million per year per station. The issue that we're looking at going forward is that with the population growth, we're going to need it to add at least one, probably two stations. So this is more looking forward to continuing to use that new growth to add to the fund balance, to build those two stations, and then be able to staff them right away as well. Is that succinct enough?
That's what we're trying to model out to make sure that we're
So
not.
if we could maybe just be
there.
prepared to kind of show that plan, that it's not just, hey, it's inflation and we're gonna throw it at it. We really are looking at this ahead and how we're applying this, because if we don't account for inflation, whether it's this tax increase or we try to use sales tax, which we don't have yet, hopefully we will in the future, then we'll get to where we need those stations and we won't have the money we might be able to build them, but we won't have another $3 million to staff them, and then we'd be looking at a gigantic increase to try to get them off the ground. So the idea is we're planning ahead a little bit at a time to keep pace so that when we're ready, we can put people in those buildings that we put in those areas.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with Jared. And I think Kyle's, the purchasing power, because we know the dollar's constantly decreasing in that value. So that, I do like that it's a low number. I always would like to maybe even cite that. I don't know how the rest of the body feels, but cite that number or notice that number at a slightly higher number to get engagement.
No.
But also, as you see tonight, this was noticed, and there's two people in the audience, which is discouraging at some points because we are talking about real money and real dollars and real taxes. So
I think that I mean, it's a good point, but I think that response will be different when they actually get the actual notice of a potential tax rate increase, right? That official one that we have to send out. So I totally agree with you, but I think that we'll get that at the next one, which is why I'm suggesting that maybe we have a little more data to put up there, even showing previous years' increases versus this one. And I can maybe speak to the work that's being done there to keep those expenses in line.
And Teddy, I get your point, I do. I'm giving you a hard time,
I know.
but
Work out so well last time.
No,
Yeah.
well, even last time when we had it, it was still not very well attended.
Well,
I think the information got out there though, so.
well, people were irritated too because we had a higher number and then they thought that we were tricking them by saying, oh, it's going to be this high, but see how good we are, we're getting it low. And
a lot of
it-
people,
and it really wasn't, it was just trying to
Talk
work
through
through
and
the
work through it, yeah.
process. But,
I think that we didn't know where we needed it
Yeah, we
exactly to
didn't.
tell the night,
yeah.
and this one, I think we're pretty good. Technically, this increase would be to cover the increase, and I think
Yeah.
that's it's a decent, it's a small amount, it's a fair amount.
And I think we've come to this philosophy of the certified tax rate with that inflation to keep that purchasing power, and then, yeah.
Yep.
No, but thanks for the work on getting
Yes.
this down because that's just what it takes.
Yep.
Digging
Well,
in.
the word that we're using there, and I've been starting to push it here too, is sustainability. We need to be able to sustain that level of service, because that's what will slip. When it comes to inflation, though, that's the thing, is that even at that, adding, say, average inflation of 2.5%, even 3% per year, just inflation, doing that 100% with property taxes is not sustainable. At some point, people will say no, and we'll be forced to drop that level of service, which I think nobody wants to do that. It would be bad for everyone, but there will be a point where the public will say we can't pay anything more, so then we need to look longer term of, as we're starting to expand our sales tax, or our direct sales tax base, how can we, I'll say, feather in a small percentage of that each year as it grows to help offset some of these inflationary costs, especially public safety in particular, because it is so labor intensive.
Yep.
Right, there's a lot of things that we're looking to do to save those costs with technological innovations and things, but you still need someone to go out there and make those decisions in those moments, and that's
AI is not gonna-
most of the job,
Yeah, it's not putting out
AI
fires.
is not going to show up?
right?
Okay.
No matter how great those robots look, no. So,
Okay, so I'll look for a motion then. I'm just trying to move this along then. Look for a motion at 1.7%. Is that what you need?
Yes, and if you can specify the dollar amount.
Is it a tax rate of 0.001352? Is that what you're talking about? Or 1%?
Yes, if you can, however, put just instead of the tax rate, if you can do the 8,552,067.
Okay.
That way, if for some reason the county ends up changing the CTR again, I won't have to come back.
Okay.
That's-
I can do that.
Thank you.
Motion to approve resolution R01-25, adopting a proposed tax rate and levying tax upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City Fire Service Area in the amount of $8,552,067.
Yes.
Motion by Jared,
Second.
second by Sherry. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion.
Just again to reiterate for the public, anyone that might have missed the initial preamble, I'll give you the post one. That's signaling our intent that that would be the maximum amount. Yep, we could change our minds, but that decision was not just made. This is just the first step in the process.
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn the HCFSA meeting.
Motion by Sherry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll open our Herriman City Safety Enforcement Area meeting. Look for approval of the minutes. 2.1.
Make a motion to have the minutes of June 11th, 2025 be prepared and distributed to each member of the HCSEA Board. The board will have 10 days to review the minutes and submit any changes to the secretary. If after 10 days there are no changes, the minutes will stand approved. If there are changes, the process will be followed until all changes are made and the board is in agreement.
Motion by Sherry,
Second.
second by Jared. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 3.1, discussion and consideration of a resolution adopting a proposed rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City Safety Enforcement Area. Kyle.
Thank you, Board. It'll be a similar format to the fire service area recommendation. So once again, I won't go into too many details on the basics, as we just went through them 15 minutes ago. We'll go over the CTR, discuss what staff's recommendations are, and then discuss either adopting the CTR or proposing a tax rate or amount that's higher than the CTR. And then once again, as mentioned by Councilmember Henderson or Board Member Henderson, this is the maximum amount that can be levied, and it's not actually levying the property. At this point, there will be a public hearing on August 13th if the board decides to propose a tax rate higher than the CTR. So once again, I should get it like embroidered on a t-shirt or something. So the CTR generates the same amount of revenue as the previous year plus any new growth. So if a home or a business increases in value, that doesn't automatically mean that their tax bill is going to go up because the rate goes down in a corresponding amount. If the board decides to adopt a tax rate higher than the certified tax rate, that goes through a process called truth in taxation, which does involve specific noticing requirements and then a public hearing in August. So with that, here is the certified tax rate information. So for 2025, the rate is decreasing to 0.001368, which will generate approximately $9.7 million. Once again, the average home value is at the bottom. So average home value has gone up from $613,600 to $640,000. You can see in 2024 was about 9.3 million. So the new growth component is about $396,000 or 4.3% increase. And for note on that $640,000 home, the average tax amount would be this is just for HCC, would be $482. Discussing a little bit about the philosophy staff has been using. Really it's per board direction. We have been segregating new growth funds from base property tax amounts With that, we did have $236,500 of inflationary costs that are in the 25 budget right now. And then next year's budget has approximately $504,450 of inflationary costs in that budget. And what we've been doing as staff is we have been keeping track of that growth money and then these inflationary costs that have been built into the budget. We've been offsetting those with the understanding we would need to come back to the board and discuss a tax increase or other alternatives to fund those inflationary costs. So with that being said, staff's recommendation is a property tax levy adjustment of $513,535, which would be a 5.3% increase. The first component is to cover that fiscal year 2025 increase that's due to inflation of $236,910, and then also do an inflation adjustment of 2.89%, which was the December CPI. So essentially what this would be doing is covering the current fiscal year's inflationary costs and then also covering a portion of next year's with that 2.89% increase. As you can see down below, that would increase the levy to 0.001440 and generate approximately $10.2 million in revenue. And then below, it does show the additional revenue that the district would see from the new growth and then from the tax increase, which would be about $970,000. And then at the bottom for that $640,000 residents, that would be about a $25 per year increase on the tax bill. And with that, that is the end of my prepared presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or have any discussion with me we'd like.
So that would be a total of 8.2, roughly?
No, it would be 5.3.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see it broke out. Sorry, never mind. My apologies.
I mean, I could
Go ahead.
regurgitate everything that I just said regarding fire and police is slightly different with some of the work that we did 2 years ago, but that's the issue, is it was 2 years ago. And so we have 2 years worth of this, so the 5.3 is 2 years. I mean, simple math, right, is just divide it in half. That's still actually a lower percentage than actual inflation. So the things that we've been doing to kind of curtail this have been working, but yeah, again, the wages for something that's even more labor intensive, so.
Are you saying police is more labor intensive than fire?
Well, yeah.
No, I do think that we have to continue to explore to pull different types of fund in there besides just property tax.
I guess for me, at least as far as numbers go, and applying them and adding more people to provide this, to keep the service level, is a little bit, that's the thing that's the most different for police, right? Is that as we grow in population, every additional home, you do reach, we've talked about this 2 years ago, you reach kind of a trigger point where you need to have another shift of officers, which is really 4, right? To provide the same level of service. Whereas with fire, we can kind of spread that out just a little bit more, right? Because we're gonna add a whole nother station and a whole nother service area to it. So between now and then, we're bringing them in, especially with UFA, the way it works, right? The benefit of having UFA, it's not just our stations responding, it's our partner stations from surrounding areas that help cover the total area. So as we need more help, and Riverton is seeing this right now, right? We're responding to a lot more calls in Riverton as they've built more to the east of us. Well, when we reconcile things at UFA, they have to pay us for the portion of the service that we're providing them. And so the same thing will happen to us with the others until we pull the trigger to build that station, right? So the timing is a little bit different when you deploy those people, if that makes sense.
What about, like, With more commercial, though, that certainly has an impact on some, because we obviously are getting higher property taxes on a commercial, and not just sales tax, but higher property taxes. But is our cost to serve on commercial, what is it like for policing? Because obviously,
Less than residential.
Probably depends
on the
on the
business.
Type of
kinds of
commercial.
commercial. I think one of the things we're seeing with UFA and the calls for service in our neighboring city is that their new commercial area is requiring a lot more ambulance calls and things. As you have more people there, more likely to have people have health issues. So commercial can draw a lot. They do pay more. They don't get so every house gets a 45% discount. As we talked, Kyle pointed out last time, our commercial valuation in Herriman is the lowest of all the cities. We're working on that. A lot of our commercial areas, remember though, are also in CDA areas, so we won't see those full property tax for till like 2035.
20
It
years.
feels like it's not as long as it used to be, but it still feels like a long time. And so we're having to build on it. It would be great to have more commercial because there's more value per square foot in a multi-story office building than there is in just a single-story house. So all those will come into play. But I think what we really see is our policing is impacted somewhat what happens here in Herriman, but also what's happening in neighboring communities, because our boundaries, the only way you know you're in a different city is because there's a welcome sign or their street signs change color. Otherwise, the criminals don't care. They just move between them. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now is we've been pretty lucky. Is that the phrase Chief uses? We've been lucky. We're out here in the cul-de-sac, but now we're seeing more movement through and some things happening. So I would take any of the commercial development. I don't think it tends to draw more. I could probably come up with some commercial uses from my past that, are other cities. Bars, sometimes if you get a lot of them in the same area, they can definitely drive police calls. I look over and they're both nodding their heads. I think they've probably served in those areas. So there are some commercials that certainly do that. I think your average store, your bigger stores, often you get a lot of shoplift calls.
Yeah, commercial is great. It depends in different ways and how we service those, right? Liquor stores are serviced in a way we tend to have some DUIs over there. A big box store that I won't mention, typically when it's built, involves hiring one officer, which is actually 4 per shift, right? Because they draw quite a few. And again, as we talk about residential, that brings a different type of police call. But the value we get from the resident isn't the same as you get from commercial, right? The dollar amount. So overall, commercial is obviously helpful, but it does bring its amount of calls. As soon as we see hotels come into the area, like them, love them, or hate them, you start to see a lot of police activity at hotels, just period. A lot of stolen cars are left in parking lots, issues in rooms and those kind of things. And not anything drastic. Typically, it's the same thing you would see in a house. It's just in a hotel room, right?
Yeah.
So we're dealing with it. But I guess the best answer, they develop police calls in different ways.
I just think
Which
it
for
would
me
be
is-
interesting to see if that helps, and it might not. It might just equal out just
Right.
because of the different types of calls, even though we get a better, property tax valuation from that.
It's a balancing act.
Council member Henderson and I spoke about this. There's different ways that you look at funding out of a property district when you're receiving the taxes from the resident or the commercial entity, right? Versus a school, a church, a liquor store. They don't pay the property tax,
Right.
So the district that is paying for your police officer to respond to that is not getting funded by that entity in that way. And you see it a little bit in the growth modeling that we have where it's an 18-month-ish, probably, Kyle, would that be fair to say? Where we don't realize the taxes that new resident would, or a new commercial would pay into the district, right? But we're providing that service that very day.
And, yeah, so we're always behind.
Yeah, so we're behind a little bit in that. So our growth curve is just, we're a little bit behind the power curve on that.
Which again, I mean, so both of those things, right? So the measures we took a few years ago to set aside new growth money, right? To have a fund balance to deploy when we need it, will help a lot with that. And then sales tax, right? So, yep, we want the sales tax for other things, but to me, that illustrates perfectly why we need to start to carve out a little bit of that every year. As we start to grow that, we need to carve some of it out to pay for the increased demand on those
Yeah.
services, but.
So it's not just all on the property
Yeah,
tax or-
there's no, there's
can't.
no way that we can sustain the same level of service solely with property taxes.
Well, and the key to sustainability probably is how we silo those funds out, right? And how we keep them in their respective areas, as we've talked about.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so look for a motion on this.
You just want the dollar amount again?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to approve Resolution R25-01, adopting a proposed rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City Safety Enforcement Area in the amount of...
Uh-oh, we didn't need that screen.
That's the screen.
Slide went away. Sorry, I didn't write it down. 10 million.
211, 240.
Oh, sorry, I didn't write it
There
down.
it is.
$211,240.
Motion by Sherry,
Second?
second by Teddy. Sherry,
Yes.
Teddy,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Kyle.
Make a
Moved.
motion. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Could we just move right on, John? Are we okay moving right on? Okay, we'll move now on to our general meeting. Welcome to our city council meetings this evening for Wednesday, June 11th. We will start with a pledge of allegiance tonight by our deputy chief, Cody Stromberg.
I pledge allegiance
Thank you, Cody. Go to item 4.2, any city council comments or recognitions? Rodeo? Rodeo? Somebody want to take rodeo?
The rodeo was fabulous. It was super fun. 3 great nights, sellout of 3 nights, which was amazing. We just barely started the 3rd night last year, so to have it sell out this year was fantastic. Just thanks to everyone who did a really good job of making a fun event.
We had our declaration for our city council members and mayor for, I just want to congratulate the candidates that put their names in. And so it will be a fun, exciting summer for some of us. And lots of fun events still coming up, so that'll be later. But congratulations on those who filed.
Okay, see no other items, we'll go to item 5, public comment. Audience members may bring any item within the city's purview to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@herriman.gov or by visiting herriman.gov/agendas and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. So I have one form here. We'll start with Adam.
Hello. Again, my name's Adam Orm. I live on Gina Road. Came here just to kind of get an update, and it looks like I missed the discussion you guys had with that. But last week, I don't know if the council's aware, we did have police officers on the street monitoring. Someone did get pulled over. And I called in to just say, hey, I'd like to kind of understand that citation. One, as a resident on the street, I actually don't know what the speed limit is. All of the neighbors, everybody that drives by is like, oh, it's a neighborhood street, it's 25 miles an hour. And the little speed signs that we do have, we bought them off of Amazon and put them up on our own poles. So knowing the area kind of dictates that. But so I talked to the police officer about that. He's like, I don't know. So he went and drove, and he says, oh, well, you got a 15-mile-an-hour sign here, and you have one on the other side as well. He talks about speeding and kind of about the code process a little bit that I don't fully understand, but it sounds like a posted sign that's accredited by the city is considered the speed limit, right? Right now we have a 15-mile sign that we got from Amazon, but they anticipate it's 15, okay? So I don't know what that citation, I asked about it, they said we have to do a lot of paperwork on my end to get that. I don't know if the city can possibly speed that up a little bit and see how fast people are going, but as I talk to neighbors that live on the street, on the asphalt side of us that come to church with us, they're like, oh, it's 25, but if you take that same speed limit of 25, you're going 10 over if it truly is a 15 miles an hour speed limit. A lot of people have gone 35, 40, which in the state code, Utah, and I looked it up, 41-6A-528. If you speed over 25 miles an hour, it's considered as reckless driving and Class B misdemeanor, which that happens a lot, okay? I did talk to the police officer at the same time. He mentioned, hey, it's like 25 is even fast on a dirt road with it not having the same protection with the grips and the tires. I know you guys have a study, and I don't know if that's been done. So is that something that we would get a report soon? Yes or
I'll
no?
let Sherry up.
Yeah, we had a great work meeting. I think that if you go back online and listen to our work meeting, we covered all this. There's studies on there. 18 miles an hour is the average speed being done on that road during the traffic study. Blake can take you outside and give you some of that information, but please go back. I think you'll be very happy with some of the discussion in the
Yeah.
work meeting.
I missed the time, so I was going to go back. and-
No, yeah, you're good, but I think we're headed down the right direction on Gina Road, but Blake will help you with the study.
Yeah,
real fast.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you,
being here.
Adam. Any other comments tonight? Catherine, did you want to make a comment, or you just want to make sure? We did get your comment, by the way, your email. So go ahead, yeah. Wendy, you'll be happy to know I know Catherine because she's from Price.
Yes, good people come from Price.
I was at her mom's junior high this weekend, so.
I'm here to address the prohibition of short-term rentals and ask the council to consider permitting them. I have a finished walkout basement. I've been a resident of Herriman for 19 years. It has a separate entrance and own dedicated off-street parking. It's already eligible under Herriman code for long-term rental, but I would like the opportunity to use the space for short-term as well. In terms of impact on the neighborhood, a short-term rental would function much like a long-term one. The number of guests and vehicles at any given time would remain essentially the same as a long-term rental. In fact, families who rent long-term generally bring more vehicles. People who go on vacation generally just take one. Short-term rental guests support local businesses. Legalizing and regulating rentals, some of which are already operating, would allow your city to collect the associated taxes with those permits. Herriman cares about maintaining the character of residential neighborhoods. This type of small business would not generate more traffic than a home where piano students take lessons or preschoolers go to school, people go get haircuts or daycare. If done carefully and responsibly, a short-term rental would have less of an impact than these types of businesses because their traffic patterns better match that of residents than traffic from students or clients. And I also want to emphasize that this is my home, my neighborhood. It's part of my home, this basement apartment, and I can and will screen potential renters. And no one cares more than I do about what kind of guests stay under my roof. I understand that the formal process to request a text change application is $800, which can be somewhat of a barrier to individual homeowners, and that's why I'm asking the council to review this in a more broad sense to the benefit of people like me and also for potential increased revenue for Herriman City. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any comments to that right now?
The ADU policy, I just think it was making its way through Planning Commission, and I would think that this is certainly part of the language that we'll be considering.
We can look at that.
Yeah, I think that we need to look at that.
Well, external ADUs is different than short-term, long-term.
Right, but it seems like it should be something we have, the whole conversation should be had during that time.
Well, we could.
I'm open at it. So what she's saying, we just directed staff 2 weeks ago to start a discussion about having like mother-in-law apartments on the back. I mean, just, in a garage or second. We weren't allowing those. We just started that process. So I think we can roll this conversation into that.
Okay.
At the time, so we'll roll that in. And
I don't mind giving you a few reasons why I've been adamantly opposed in the past and would likely be going forward.
I don't know if this is on the agenda, so
Well, this isn't policy.
we can speak to it. We just we can't make a decision on it, yeah.
Right, this is just giving them my opinion and some things to think about. And we're always open to revisit things, et cetera. But a few things that we see often. It's your home, and I understand everything you're saying about you. That's not everyone. I'll just give you an example. I coach lots of soccer teams. We travel a lot. We've rented lots of homes in areas that allow short-term rentals. I would hate to live next to that house. One of our things is to weigh people's property rights. You have property rights, but so do the people next to you. It's in a single-family zone. They've invested their life savings and everything into that home that's for their family. To be disrupted by, a bad actor is pretty tough for people. So those are just a couple of quick things off the cuff surface to think
And
about.
those are, I totally agree, and I think that.
We're not going to go back
Okay.
back and forth. This is me just saying those are a couple of big things, as we've discussed before. I have a hard time getting over, but I'm absolutely willing. Give me a call, email me, and talk about a few other things. But for me, that's a pretty steep hill to climb.
Okay.
And I would be a little the opposite. I just think that
Sherry,
home occupation is home occupation, so we allow what you're talking about all the time, right? Daycares, nail salons, hair salons, all kinds of stuff in homes, right? But there's strict guidelines that say, here's what you have to do and here's what you can't do. And I would think that this would fall underneath the home occupation, and there would be guidelines.
You know my problems with those
No,
as
for
well,
sure,
for all
for
the
sure,
same reasons I
exactly.
just talked about.
Exactly, but then there would be guidelines that say, here's how you have to follow this. They have to be off-street parking, they have to be this, If you're in violation this many times, if the cops have to keep coming, then you lose your permit. But, it just feels like there can be ways to monitor it that you could still utilize your home in that capacity, because a lot of times people, maybe they have so much extra room now. Maybe other kids moved down. It's like, well, how can I better utilize this space? So, because I too go to different communities, and I love to stay in a home because then everybody can stay in there together, right? Rather than renting a hotel. So, I have a hard time saying it's okay for me to go in another community and do it there, but I don't want anybody to come into my community and do it here. It just feels kind of,
that is true.
So anyway, I think that
I just wanted to point out that there's a best case, worst case, right?
no, for sure.
You've illustrated the best case. You guys know I'm going to be devil's advocate. There's a worst case, and we will
Absolutely.
experience it. So
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it. So long story short, we're going to discuss it, because I think we have to roll this pool discussion in
I think so,
to this
yeah.
too. So I think there's going to be some big discussions around all of this. So there's pool rental stuff happening that we don't have covered in ordinance, that we've got to figure out how to, people are renting their pools and having parties with 50 people, like that's, so we've got to roll that into this ordinance too, and so there's going to be some discussion, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Keep in
Thank
touch
you
with
so
us, and
much.
we'll take it under
So
consideration.
what's the best way for us to stay tuned and stay in touch? Should we contact you or just wait to read what's on?
Watch for notice, you can watch for notices, or you're happy to email us.
you
Yep.
can sign up. I forget the URL to go to for the state, for the county.
Yes.
You can sign up for city notices. You'll get an email every time we post an agenda, and you'll see when it's on that agenda.
Herriman.gov/notifications. And you can go in there, type your email, and you'll get every council meeting, and you can just watch for that. And then, I think you can even sign up by keyword, I think, on the county or state website.
Perfect.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah.
it. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming. Any other public comment tonight? Nope, we're good. Okay, we'll move on to item 6. We'll do council reports. Jared.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, Teddy?
Same, nothing.
Ooh, I like this.
It's gonna
Sherry?
be fast, nothing here. Don't mess it up.
I'm hoping not to. I'm going back real fast, and I will say, I don't know if council, the invitation came up really fast. Last Thursday, the 29th, I was invited to, myself and Nathan were invited to this Built Here Housing Summit at the Governor's Mansion. There were about 43 mayors and city managers or other people invited. I was asked to be on a panel to speak, I guess not to counter the governors, but the governor's pretty passionate about cities need to help, and there were 3 of us mayors that were on the panel to speak against, kind of about how cities are doing their part, and kind of almost to say what we've talked about, that we think there's different levers we should be pulling. Anyway, so we were kind of counter that, but with the understanding that it is a concern, housing costs are a concern, but that density and pushing more to prove faster doesn't necessarily solve when we have 200,000+ units just in the county to still build. So we talked a lot about infrastructure needs that we can't afford to even build. We've got roads in our own city that we can't afford to build right now, like Gina, and yet we're being asked to take on some of this growth. So a lot of very good discussions. We'll see where it goes. It's gonna be a big year, and housing's still coming with the housing plan, so I'll keep everybody updated on those meetings too, so.
Can I make a comment
Yes.
about that? Kyle had some great slides, and you'll notice that all of the legislation over the last few years, guess what Herriman's price tag on our homes are? $640,000 in that average home. So obviously it hasn't brought down the cost of house a lot in Herriman, and we've greatly
And a lot of
increased the
legislation.
density over the last 15
Crazy
years.
how if you actually look at the numbers, there's a direct correlation with the higher housing costs and higher density.
Yep. Anyway.
We've been there. Okay, that's my report. So we'll go on to item 8, consent agenda. Look for a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Motion by Jared, second by Teddy. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Item 9.1, Herriman Community Center remodel. Justin?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So excited to bring this project. It's been a while we've been working on it. Something that Wendy's been working very hard on for a long time. So we're excited to move this forward, well, hopefully. So here's obviously the community center is located in what was, I guess, Old City Hall. And so it's on 6,000 West and approximately 130th South. Just quickly, we'll go through the project budget, bids that we received, talk about potentially revising the scope of that project to fit within the budget based on the bids that we received, and then talk about some recommendations. Project budget, so the general fund provided approximately $30,000 for design. The design ended up costing more than that, and Wendy was able to receive some additional county funds to allow us to finish that design. So the total design cost was around $55,000. We also received 2 separate grants. One is an energy efficiency grant, and the other was CDGB funds. So you can see the totals there for fiscal year 25. We had a total budget of just over $294,000. Fiscal year 26, we received additional CDGB grant funds of $135,000. So combining those 2 budgets, because the project will be completed next year, we'll roll these funds in fiscal year 25 to 26, bringing the total budget to just under $430,000. That leaves approximately $374,000 for construction. The bids we received, I'll explain the bids. So the bid amount, or the base bid amount, we had two separate bids, base bid, bid alternate. The base bid covered the majority of the project, ADA ramp, HVAC replacement, electrical improvements, and remodeling of the upstairs. And then the bid alternate included some additional lighting replacement, the basement, and then the exterior lighting on the building. That was the bid alternate. We had the bid alternate hoping the base bid would come in under budget and we could do that, but it didn't obviously do that. We had roughly $374,000. Total bid amount came in to $510,000. As you can see, Gladwell Construction was the low bidder there. So moving on, as I just said, it came in well over budget. So working with Gladwell Construction, who was the low bidder, we went over the project documents and the bids, tried to figure out how we could get within that budget this year. So essentially, we'll be able to complete a large portion of the project. The biggest single item that we'll have to pull out are the ADA ramp improvements, which were roughly about $110,000. And so that will be pulled out. We'll be able to complete the HVAC and the electrical energy efficiency grant, which was the main purpose of this project. And then we'll be able to do some of the demolition that's required for the HVAC and electrical improvements. Then the other thing we'll do is be able to complete the divider wall between the lobby and then the larger area that will be the community room so that that can be secured. Basically what we're removing is a lot of the finishings that would be in that to make the space usable. So essentially we've revised this scope to be able to fit within the budget. So moving forward, we're looking for approval from the council to award the contract to Gladwell Construction with the not to exceed amount matching our budget in the contract and the revised scope that we just looked at, so that would be in the contract. Wendy is currently working on some additional funds that might allow us to complete the entire project, and we hope to have the answer to that and receive those funds potentially before this project is completed and the contractor is willing to complete the project as originally bid, with the bid alternate included if we receive the funds. So hoping that we can get those grant funds prior to the construction being completed. So staff recommends awarding the contract to Gladwell Construction with those provisions, and then also be able to move forward with the project if we do receive those additional funds, with providing a work directive to the contractor and adding those things as a change order because they were originally in the contract. So that's the presentation, and do you have any questions?
Just, he'll stick with the bid if we can order.
He's been a great contractor to work with. Yeah, he's been very helpful. Spent a lot of hours going through the project with us and trying to get the project down to where we could have somewhat of a completed project within the budget. So he's been great to work with so far.
Awesome.
I should have a response on the grant in July. So the county had $1.4 million available and things were underspent in other projects that they lumped into a pot and put it back out to us. So I've requested $160,000 additional to just finish the project out. So I think they'll be supportive of that.
Cool.
Does that pending any programming type, or is it just a community center, or
Say that again, I'm sorry.
any programming type, like indicated, like for seniors?
It has,
or
yeah, it has
Okay.
to be specific for seniors, low-income adults, teenagers.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Look for a motion then on 9.1.
Do you need us to note that if you get the funds that you can spend them on there, or do you have to come back and do the budget on those?
So I think you can just, I'm not looking for, another approval unless Nathan wants to come back. We can just move the project forward with the work directive and change order.
Well, I think we could do the change order. If we get the grant funds, we'll probably have to amend the budget to accept them, but that's kind of outside the approval of the contract. I think if you do it the way it's worded, on this staff, on the chart here in front of you, if they become available, that would be fine. We'd still bring them back the budget part of it to say, yes, we're accepting these funds. That's a different process.
Okay.
Motion to approve project to, motion to approve project to Gladwell Construction with the revised project scope and not to exceed $374,390 to remodel the Herriman Community Center.
Motion by Jared.
If you want us, unless you want us to come back, you can also include, if additional funds are available, staff would like to complete the original scope.
So that's what you were asking. That's what you were.
Yeah, I was looking at this on the screen when I said that, but if you added that last sentence.
Change the answer. Change that answer.
I'll amend my, my motion to include, if additional funds are available, staff would like to complete the original scope of the work and bid alternate through a work directive and change order.
Okay, that amended motion is in order. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Sherry. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Thank you, Justin. Our last item, 9.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance adopting a proposed rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the city of Herriman, Utah. Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have some people here tonight. This is exciting compared to the board meetings earlier. So tonight, I do want to go over the basics of property tax in the state, how it exactly works. Then we'll review what's called the certified tax rate for the tax year 2025 or the upcoming tax period. I have a slide showing the effects of inflation on the tax rate, and then discuss staff's recommendations for the tax rate for the upcoming year. And then the action item for the council is to either adopt the certified tax rate, or it's also called CTR, or propose a different tax rate for 2025. What that would mean is it's not directly enacting the levy. There would be another public hearing. This would be the maximum amount that could be levied after the public hearing in August. So first, just going over the basics. So what the certified tax rate is, so that's the rate that generates the same amount of revenue as the previous year plus any new growth. So there is no adjustment for inflation. So during the post-pandemic years when we were seeing 8-9% inflation, there was no adjustment to what the tax revenue this city received was. We also don't receive revenue from an increase in valuation. So if a home or business goes up in value, that doesn't mean their tax bill automatically goes up. In fact, the opposite actually happens. So when the property value goes up, all things being equal, the property tax levy actually goes down, so the entity gets the same amount of revenue as the prior year. If the city council or a board decides they want property tax higher than the certified tax rate, they go through a process outlined in state code called Truth in Taxation. Boiling it down, it has specific advertising requirements and a public hearing, and you've probably seen those on television. They love to run those stories, who's proposing tax increases. So getting into the nuts and bolts, so the certified tax rate this year, the mill levy itself went down to 0.000180. So what that would do is generate about $1.08 million for the city. As you can see below, the average home value in Herriman has gone up from $613,600 to $640,000 this year. And just as a side note, that number actually does come from the county assessor, so it's coming directly from assessed valuation data that that office actually prepares. With the certified tax levy, it would increase the revenue the city receives by $47,041. Just as a reminder, that's for new growth, for new businesses, new homes, and on day one, we do have to provide services to those residents. Sometimes there's an impression that we get a windfall with this quote-unquote growth, but really we're having to use those funds to supply services to our new residents. And then on that $640,000 home, the average amount that is paid to Herriman City directly is $63. With this, so this does show a graph of what the effect of inflation is on our mill levy. So the dark blue is the baseline, so that's our normal revenue that we receive, and then the lighter, almost fluorescent blue is a 5-year average inflation, and then the green is year-over-year inflation. So you can see that gap between the dark blue and the green is the effect of inflation has had. And I do also want to note the city of Herriman has not raised their general tax levy since incorporation in 1999. So we're going on over 25 years with the same revenue. So with that being said, staff's recommendation as a philosophy is to make small increases to the certified tax rate each year to keep what I call the purchasing power of the tax revenue even, so we aren't losing ground as inflation eats that tax base. The proposed guideline to use is the CPI from December of '24, which is 2.89%. If that was adopted, that would generate, as you can see, about 1.1 million or an additional 31,000. And then with our new growth money, that would be an additional about 78,000 to the city. Down below, you can see on that $640,000 home, I think we all wish they were still $340,000. The tax increase would be about $2 a year. And with that, that is my prepared presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
It's such a small amount.
Do you want to add?
I don't have any questions. I'm inclined to say no, we don't increase this one.
Just-
What's the purpose at this point? When this was initially put in place, none of us were here. But having gone through the history of it and looking at the budget and the economics of the city from start to where we are and to where we're going, it was originally put in place to get started, right? The city had, at that time, at incorporation, had nothing. They farmed out all of the different service districts, et cetera, right? In the last few years, we've brought public safety back, but we've dedicated that to their own taxing districts versus most other cities lump it all together, right? We've separated it to be more transparent. I don't see how, in order for this to make a measurable difference, we would have to increase this much more than inflation over many, many years. I just don't see that it's purposeful.
I agree on that base statement. Although keeping pace with our traditional philosophies on the other districts or entities, would it not be the same on this?
Those others right now don't have other funding sources. Right, the city, that's what I said, when a city was first incorporated, they didn't have anything. They used this to get started. That's when they started receiving road money and all those, right, building fee, all those sorts of things. That's the main reason it's never changed, is those other funding sources have come in.
I just look at a number and I think it's $2, and you do, there is a perception, a political perception about you raised our taxes at the city, and for $2, I'm not sure that it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
But-
$2 is $2 because it's not just this one. Right?
Understand.
Every taxing entity, if you, again, I could go on and I'll do this August 13th as
Right.
I do. I'll show you that my actual property tax go down that list. Every single one of those increases theirs every
Right.
single year, and it's turned into enormous amounts. So $2, and they all use the same argument. It's only $2. It's only $8. Yeah, but you add them all up, and it's hundreds of dollars.
It would be at 35 if we add these all up, because we're 33 with the other two, and then this will be 2 more.
Right.
That's on a 640,000, so if you have more or less, it's more or less. More for me.
I'm okay with that.
Understand the philosophy behind it. I think to keep the purchasing power, that it absolutely makes sense, but I'm not sure that works. work hard to increase the sales tax revenue.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to,
Local.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eat one more meal in the city.
I think maybe we could take into consideration of putting out more marketing material content on shopping local, or, you know, to get that extra $30,000.
Yeah, even, we've talked before, like even if you're ordering online to a store that might be in a neighboring city, if you order it here, and they go pick it up there, we get the sales tax revenue.
And a lot of people, like, we talk to high schools about, they go to lunch and sometimes in a different city, and they don't realize that 10 cents or that 4 cents or whatever, it adds up over 1,000 students per year, so, yeah.
Okay, easy peasy. I'll
Use the
look,
Smiths in Herriman,
That's always my example, right?
right. Okay, I'll look for a motion then to, how do you want to do it with just that?
You can just use the tax rate, it's probably
1 point.
easier.
Okay. So, motion to approve ordinance number 2025-14, adopting a proposed tax, or proposed rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City at the rate of the, this is the certified rate,
Yes, the
At
180.
right? So the .000180.
Okay, motion by Jared,
Second?
second by Teddy. Jared,
Yes.
Teddy,
Yes.
Sherry,
yes.
and I'll vote yes, that motion carries. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our meetings tonight. Future meetings, Planning Commission next Wednesday. Planning still happening next week with Town Days? Okay. Planning Commission meeting Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. Next City Council meeting 2 weeks on the 25th at 7 o'clock. Events coming up. Tarzan, Cohen and I went and saw Tarzan last night. They do a great job, and so that goes through Monday without the rest of this week, skipping Sunday, and wraps up Monday night.
If you hurry, you can make it in 15 minutes.
Yep, you can
It's
get there
as soon as it
tonight.
starts.
Beautiful show.
It's fun.
Great venue, beautiful show. They do a great job.
Sherry, you were there Monday?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Nice. Town Day starts Saturday morning with a Yeti run and then a chocolate walk type of thing that afternoon or later that morning, and then continuing in the next week. I will add the Warriors have a home game, first
Yeah,
playoff
first
home game
home game. First playoff game in 7 years for home team advantage.
that we've never had.
Yeah.
So Gabe said at my lunch today that they're the only professional team in Utah to make the playoffs this year. So
Nice.
get out and support them. So that is Saturday night, 8 o'clock here in Herriman. They play the Seattle something.
No, it's
Seawolves.
Seawolves, yeah. Whatever those are. Miss Utah's happening downtown
Miss
this
Utah is-
weekend.
Good luck to all their
My little is Honeybee, and it's super awesome. We were there last night at This Is the Place. Wonderful event, wonderful program, so.
Mr.
That's
Mayor,
Miss Herriman and Miss Salt Lake County.
Yep.
So good luck to both of them. Yes,
there had been a discussion about a closed session to get a security briefing. Are you still, chiefs prepared to do that?
I want to. It won't be 5 minutes.
Do a 5-minute? You want to do a 5-minute security briefing?
Yeah.
Okay, want me to make that motion?
Okay, let's
You
do
know,
it.
say no.
Vote no.
I make a motion to temporarily recess the city council, you want me to do this now?
Yeah, yep, we'll do that.
To recess the city council meeting to go into closed meeting for the following purposes provided in Utah State Code annotated 52-4-205 to security F, discussion regarding deployment of, no, which one should I do?
Yeah,
Or G?
no F. You're right, you were right. Yep.
Discussion regarding deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems.
Okay, motion by Sherry,
Second?
second by Teddy. Jared?
Sure.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote sure as well. So we'll move into closed. We need Chief, Nathan, Wendy. You don't want Wendy? Wendy doesn't want to come? You want Anthony? Is that who you were pointing at? Oh, okay. I was going to, Anthony. Okay, so just Chief, Nathan, Council. So, and Cody. We'll take Cody too.